Picture this. A little boy from Unity Village, East Coast Demerara, living in a wooden house, surrounded by cane fields and the scent of hard times. His name? Bharrat Jagdeo, born January 23rd, 1964. Now, this wasn't just any village. Back then, Guyana was still British Guyana. Independence was around the corner, and politics was like a never-ending domino game. Loud, competitive, and everybody swore they knew the rules better than the next man. If you're ready to dive into the drama, the power plays, and the mystery of Jagdeo's rise, and what it could mean for Guyana, CARICOM, and the Caribbean's future, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment on where you think this story is headed. Because trust me, you're going to want to be part of this conversation. Bharrat's parents kept it simple. His dad worked on the railway, his mom ran the household and a little farming on the side. But his family story stretched far beyond Demerara, all the way to Pirthakurane in Uttar Pradesh, India. His grandfather, Ram Jaiwan, arrived in Guyana in 1912 as an indentured laborer, part of the Nonia caste, salt makers by tradition. He grew up in a Hindu home, temple prayers, Diwali lamps, and enough mythi to put a dentist into early retirement. And politics? That bug bit him early. He joined the PPP's youth wing at just 13. By 16, he was already a full party member, probably still doing homework while plotting national budgets. School. He nailed it. First Gibson primary, then Mahayaka multilateral, where, fun fact, he once taught before he even had a degree. But in 1984, he won a scholarship to study in Moscow, earning a master's in economics from Patrice Lumumba University. So, yes, he literally graduated as an empire crumbled. If that's not political foreshadowing, I don't know what is. But here's where we zoom out, because Bharrat Jagdeo didn't rise in a vacuum. By the 1980s, the Indo-Guyanese, especially Hindu communities, had learned to work the system. They'd had decades to adapt to the English language, to master the civil service, and to hold on to land. See, Afro-Guyanese had earlier access to missionary schools after slavery ended in 1834. But Indo-Guyanese eventually caught up and in rural areas even surpassed literacy rates by pooling resources to keep kids in school longer. By the late 80s, many Hindu families had at least 2 or 3 generations fluent in English and savvy in the bureaucracy. Combine that with demographics, higher birth rates meant Indo-Guyanese were now the largest ethnic group, about 50% of the country versus 35% Afro-Guyanese. And in a winner-takes-all political system, that's not just a statistic, that's a road to State House. So when young Bharrat left for Moscow in 1984 to study economics at Patrice Lumumba University, he wasn't just a bright kid chasing a degree. He was part of a demographic wave. Indo-Guyanese had the numbers, the party loyalty, and a growing lock on Guyana's political machinery. Jagdeo came back in 1990, master's degree in hand, just as Guyana was broke. And I don't mean miss a few bills broke. I mean full-on country can't breathe broke. Years of Burnham's socialist experiments and economic mismanagement had left Guyana in debt, industries collapsing, and migration draining talent. In 1993, he became junior minister of finance, then senior minister by 1995, the 1997 general elections. The PPP, under Janet Juggin, narrowly won over the PNC in a campaign so heated, you could have fried Follery on the political tension. Street protests erupted, court petitions flew, and the country was split down the middle. When Janet's health declined in 1999, the party needed someone young, loyal, and capable. Jagdeo was their man. At just 35 years old, he became president, one of the youngest heads of state in the entire world. While his peers were worrying about mortgage rates and buying their first Toyota Corolla, Jagdeo was worrying about how to keep a nation from financial collapse. His first big test came in 2001, an election so messy it made 1997 look like a tea party. Accusations of fraud, political violence, police on the streets, it was tense. But Jagdeo and the PPP held on, securing his first personal mandate to rule. And once he had power, let's just say he learned quickly that winning the vote was the easy part. Keeping control, that's the real game in Guyana. His supporters called him a visionary, the man who modernized Guyana, cut the national debt, and pushed social programs. His critics called him a dictator in disguise, the man who never leaves, and sometimes just, well, let's say words we can't put on YouTube without getting demonetized. Jagdeo was part economist, part street fighter. He could sweet talk the IMF in the morning and be ripping into political opponents by the evening. Even after stepping down in 2011, many believe he's been pulling the strings behind the PPP's every move, like a Caribbean Frank Underwood, just without the Southern barbecue ribs. His supporters called him a visionary. His critics? A dictator in disguise. Of course, every political tale needs drama, and Jagdeo's personal life provided plenty. He married Varshni Singh, a medical doctor, in 1998. Together, they seemed like the perfect first couple. Young, modern, educated. But by 2007, the marriage was in ruins. Singh accused him of neglect, saying she lived like a squatter in State House. No children came from that union. And since then, Jagdeo has remained childless, pouring his life into politics instead. Some say the People's Progressive Party, the PPP, became his true family. Others joke that his only baby is Guyana itself, spoiled, disciplined, and micromanaged by Daddy Jagdeo. Fast forward, Guyana discovers massive offshore oil reserves, and suddenly, this once-forgotten country is the hottest ticket in the global energy game. Who's there, once again, pulling strings behind the scenes? Bharrat Jagdeo. Even when he's not president, Jagdeo has never left the room. He's the quiet strategist, the party general, the kingmaker. Some say President Irfan Ali runs the country, but Jagdeo runs the party and by extension the nation. It's a tag team, but Jagdeo is the senior partner, the man whispering in the background while Ali takes the spotlight. Supporters argue that's exactly what Guyana needs. A steady hand who knows the system inside out, someone who can negotiate with ExxonMobil, China, and Washington all in the same week. Detractors call it unhealthy, one man holding so much influence for so long, like a chess player who refuses to leave the board. But love him or loathe him, when you think of Guyana's oil, you think of Jagdeo. What makes him so polarizing? It's the mix of brilliance and bluntness. Jagdeo has a knack for saying exactly what he thinks, even if it sounds arrogant. He'll charm you in one sentence and cut you down in the next. He doesn't just play politics. He plays it like high-stakes poker. Now, here's where the mystery deepens. The PPP, Jagdeo's party, stands poised to win again in the upcoming elections. But what does that mean for Guyana and for CARICOM? If Jagdeo's PPP secures another term, Guyana's oil-fueled boom is likely to accelerate. Billions of dollars are already flowing in, skyscrapers rising where cane fields once stood. Georgetown is starting to look less like a sleepy capital and more like a mini Dubai. For the Caribbean, this means something revolutionary. For the first time, one of its own will be an energy superpower. With Jagdeo guiding the PPP, Guyana could bankroll regional projects, dictate trade policy, and even shift the balance of power in CARICOM itself. Smaller islands, long dependent on aid, may soon find themselves looking east to Georgetown instead of north to Washington or London. But here's the tension. Will that wealth trickle down to the ordinary Guyanese? Or will it vanish into the pockets of elites and foreign corporations? Jagdeo's critics warn of the resource curse, oil turning friends into rivals, communities into battlegrounds, and politics into a feeding frenzy. Now, let's talk wealth. Jagdeo has been listed among the richest people in Guyana, with estimates floating around $22 million. That's right, $22 million. And that's not just from a presidential salary, unless he's been moonlighting as a cricket star or secretly selling pepper pot in bulk. Some have wondered aloud, how did he get that rich? Well, let's just say he's got a knack for investments, development initiatives, and occasionally raising eyebrows in the process. Bharrat Jagdeo is not just a politician. He's a symbol of Guyana's contradictions. Humble beginnings and high-rise ambitions, village roots and global negotiations, socialist training in Moscow, and capitalist deals with Wall Street. He's the past, the present, and quite possibly the future. And yet, ask 10 Guyanese what they think of him, and you'll get 10 different answers. Some will say, he saved us. Others will spit back, he sold us out. But no one will say, I don't know him. Because Jagdeo is unforgettable. He has no children of his own. But in a strange way, the nation itself is his legacy. If Guyana rises, his name will be etched in gold. If it falls into chaos, his fingerprints will still be all over the ruins. So let's zoom out. If Jagdeo's PPP wins again, Guyana becomes not just the story of one nation, but the story of an entire region. Imagine CARICOM with $1 trillion economy at its table. Imagine climate talks where the Caribbean isn't begging for scraps, but demanding respect, because one of their own controls an energy empire. And in the middle of it all, you'll still find Jagdeo, the man who built his career on turning crises into opportunities, the man who always seems to be holding the final card. As the next election approaches, one question looms larger than all the skyscrapers in Georgetown. Is Jagdeo the man who will lead Guyana and CARICOM into a golden age of prosperity, or into the same old cycle of power and profit, dressed up in new oil wealth? History has a way of answering those questions, but one thing's for sure. When the story of Guyana is told, you cannot tell it without him. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly how he planned it. So, what do you think? Is Jagdeo a visionary or a puppet master? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into Guyana's political drama, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because more stories from the Caribbean's halls of power are on the way. Thanks for watching.